Elijah appealed to all the people and said, "How long will you straddle the issue?" How long will you straddle the issue? An interesting image. Sometimes when we hear of the people worshiping Baal and other gods, we think that they just up and left the Lord, the God of Israel. But in fact, they had one foot in and one foot out, hedging their bets. I'd like to turn to, we don't do this quite as much as we should as preachers, but in our opening prayer that we say, sometimes we can just say these things and maybe it be perfunctory. But grant that we who call on you in our need may at your prompting discern what is right, and by your guidance do it. God is calling us to no longer straddle the issue, to listen to him, to listen to his wisdom, to follow his promptings, and to do it. There are so many voices in our world calling us, prompting us. Follow us. We have what you're looking for. We will give you security and wealth. Join us. And with all of these many different voices, we're straddling the line. And the question becomes, how can we be a people? How can we be united if we're not even united in our own heart? Jesus says today that I have come not to abolish the law, but to fulfill it. And so, one of the first questions that we might ask is, well, what is the law and what is its purpose? Why do we have a law in the first place? And to that we go back to how it all began. A people who had for centuries been under the thumb of an oppressive Pharaoh, many different gods. And the people were only really united, maybe in a common ancestry, in their common oppression. And now God has freed them. But he still needs to make them into a people, a real people, united in heart and mind. And we are told in the scriptures that not only is this for the benefit of all of God's people, to be united in their love of the one true God, and to be united with one another in this kingdom. But so great will this witness be that it will become a light to the world, so that others may come to know him and find their place among God's people as well. And so this is the intention of the law, to draw people into the one thing that unites them, the one true God. The God who liberates and gives life. The God who is the author of all creation. The God who hears the cries of the poor and brings them deliverance. Come to me and I will give you rest, and I will draw you to myself and thus draw you closer to one another. And so this is the intention of the law. But we realize that people are easily swayed. They were back then and they are now. And so they straddle the issue. Sure, we worship God and we honor him. But there are also these other gods that promise some pretty cool things. And so they begin to worship Baal. Baal, who is said to come in and bring the rain clouds. Now you can imagine where the people are living, the rain is a very important thing. You need rain drought is always a very real possibility and danger for the people. And so they hear of this God that promises a rich harvest, and so they hedge their bets. We'll worship the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, but we'll also worship this Baal, just in case. And so the people's hearts are divided. Things begin to fracture. You know, we hear readings like our first one today, and we're reminded our God is indeed a jealous God. After all, he is the one true God who has made us. And it's not in any sense of pride that he calls us to worship him, but that he wants what's best for his people. He wants them to be united. And they are divided. Sisters and brothers, one of the works of the prophets is to see the signs of the times, to recognize what's happening in the world in which they find themselves, and to look at that in light of Revelation, to look at it in light of what God has done and what God promises, and the law that he has set. And Elijah, looking into the signs of the times, realizes that the people are going astray and they are becoming divided. He's the one true prophet, and all of these others have gone astray. What does it even mean to be Israel anymore? Who are we as a people? All will be lost if you follow down this path. Now, sisters and brothers, I don't know how much you go on social media, but right now there's some images that have gone viral. Coming out of Texas, of people taking children to a strip club and having people have provocative dances with lewd signs all around and putting dollar bills into the thongs of adults. That's happening right now. How long will we straddle the issue? You know what's even more shocking than that happens, if you go and you look online, there are a lot of people who are upset. Where there are a lot of people who are saying, what's the big deal? I don't even see anything wrong with this. How can a people stand? How can people see one thing and see two entirely different things? God is what unites a people. God is what reminds us of who we are and where we come from, what will draw us together. In a nation with people whose hearts are divided, a nation of people who see good for evil and evil for good, cannot stand. It has happened time and time again, and that is the work of the prophets, to look into the signs of the times and say, this has happened before. And we know what comes of it. Turn back to God. He will give you peace. He will give you healing. He will give you unity in life. When Jesus says that I have come not to abolish the law, but to fulfill it, we must understand that this was always the work of God, to unite the people to him and to one another. Now, as you can imagine, in Jesus' time, so many people were terrified of making any little mistake. They looked at the mistakes of their ancestors and they realized that we need to build up walls to protect ourselves, to make sure that we don't have any foreign influence into our families, into our communities. And so they built up these huge walls and barriers to try and keep the influence of other gods and to keep them out. And we can understand that impulse, but that was not the intention of God. The intention of God was to unite the people, to be a light for the world so that they may come. And so Jesus comes to say, yes, there is a law, and yes, we must be united. But let us not shut each other out, casting out family members, casting out people who went astray, putting them on the outside with no way of coming back. I have come to hold them to the law. But even more importantly, I have come to invite them in. That you do not have to be alone. That you can leave these things behind and find your place once again beside us. Because that has always been the work of God. That is his desire for his people. And so this is how mercy and justice are two sides of the same coin. Calling us to the truth. Calling us to the moral life. But always leaving the door open and inviting people to come. And so, sisters and brothers, let us no longer straddle the issue. Let us make sure that we have a singular heart dedicated to God, who unites us, that heals us, and makes us a light for the world to see. Amen.